Decide upon the exact location of the boiler, taking into consideration the minimum clearances required, the position of the flue, the method of condensate removal, and pluming issues. Place the template on the wall, ensuring it is plumb, and mark the hole positions for the hanging bracket, jig support plate, and flue. The Flexicom range can be installed using a top outlet or direct rear flue. Remove the template from the wall and drill the flue hole using a 105 mm core drill or 125 mm if external access is not practical. The standard horizontal flue has a built-in fall of 2.5 degrees, so the hole can be drilled horizontally. Drill the holes for the hanging bracket and jig support plate. Locate the jig support plate onto the hanging bracket assembly. Screw the hanging bracket and jig support plate to the wall, using suitable fastenings for the surface on which the boiler is mounted. If external access is not available and the direct rear flue is to be used, this must be fitted internally before fitting the hanging bracket. Fit the filling loop with the O-ring seal to the double-check inlet valve and secure with the spring clip from the loose items pack. Connect the copper tails to the isolating valves on the jig plate, taking note of the sequence to be used, shown in the instruction manual or on the wall template. Connections are via compression fittings. Slide the jig plate onto the jig support plate and ensure all the blanking plugs are tight. The system can be connected without the boiler being mounted, using 22 mm for the central heating flow and return and 15 mm for the domestic hot water and gas connection. When plumbing the system pipework to the copper tails, do not subject the isolating valves to heat. Connect the two filling loop handles using the screws provided. The Flexicom can be installed using multiple fluing options, including horizontal, vertical, rear, and twin flue. The standard horizontal flue incorporates a built-in fallback of 2.5 degrees to the boiler. However, all extensions must be installed with a fall of 44 mm per meter to allow condensate to run back to the boiler. For the purposes of this DVD, a rear flue installation has been selected. For a rear flue, measure the distance from the outside wall to the inside wall face. This measurement must not exceed 512 mm. The horizontal flue is telescopic and requires no cutting. Adjust the flue to the measured wall thickness, plus 35 mm. Drill a 3 mm diameter hole in this position and secure with a screw provided, and seal around the joint using the jointing tape provided. Attach the rubber sealing collar onto the locating ring on the flue terminal. Push the terminal assembly through the wall, either externally or internally. If fitting externally, this must be done prior to mounting the hanging bracket. Draw the flue through the wall and engage into the clamping band grips, ensuring a protrusion of between 30 to 38 mm from the end of the clamping band grips. Secure the flue using the clamping band supplied. Ensure the securing screw of the clamping band is in the 9 o'clock position and that the clamping band is sufficiently tightened. The built-in filling loop allows pre-testing of the system pipework before actual installation of the boiler. This requires the manometer kit available from Glowworm to enable the correct fill pressure to be determined. Attach the manometer kit to the central heating drain point on the isolation valve and ensure that the drain point is open. Open the central heating flow and return isolating valves and the domestic cold water inlet valve using a flat-bladed screwdriver. Connect the filling loop to the double check valve by tightening the knurled nut. Open the two filling tap handles by rotating them through 90 degrees to fill the heating system to a pressure of 1 bar. Close the two filling taps. Vent the air from the system and repressurize if necessary. Check the entire central heating system for leaks. If the boiler is not immediately fitted, the system should be drained once the test has been completed to prevent the risk of freezing. To comply with the water regulations, the filling loop must be disconnected from the double check valve by unscrewing the knurled nut. Conduct a gas soundness test using the pressure drop method to ensure tightness of the gas supply. Once the soundness tests have been completed, ensure all isolating valves are in the closed position. The blanking plate can now be discarded. The boiler can now be hung onto the fixing jig. Remove the rear flue outlet cover. Position the washers provided in the loose items pack into the isolating valves. Lifting the boiler into position, lean the top of the boiler slightly to the wall and position just above the hanging bracket. Lower the boiler slowly, push back and engage onto the hanging bracket, making sure the boiler is located over the retaining bosses. For safety reasons, we would always recommend the boiler is lifted by 2 people. Tighten the nuts between the boiler and the fixing jig, ensuring previously positioned washers are not disturbed, and check for leaks. Select the location for the condensate drain. This, if possible, should be discharged into the internal household drainage system. If this is not practical, discharge can be made externally into the household drainage system or a purpose-designed soakaway. Connect the flexible condensate connection on the boiler to the chosen drain point using 21.5 mm overflow pipe, ensuring a continuous fall of 44 mm per meter towards the drain. Connect the PRV discharge pipe to the discharge valve using the nut and washer provided in the loose items pack. Extend to the chosen termination point using not less than 15 mm diameter copper pipe. For ease of service and to prevent damage to the boiler caused by heat, it is advisable to use a compression fitting when extending the discharge pipe. Connection of the boiler to the electrical system and any heating system controls must be through a common isolator. Isolation should preferably be by a double pole switched fuse spur box, and the box should be readily accessible and preferably adjacent to the boiler. It should be identified as to its use. Remove the securing screw and pull out the electrical connection block. Remove the connection block cap and wire the mains cable to the terminal strip using not less than 0.75 mm squared diameter cable. The cable should be correctly routed through the entry point on the connection block. The Flexicom can be used in conjunction with either 230-volt system controls or volt-free controls. Volt-free controls can be installed without certification to Part P of the building regulations. When connecting volt-free system controls, polarity is not important. Volt-free controls are wired into the volt-free connection terminal using standard bell wire. Fully open any isolating valves in the mains water supply to the boiler. Open the domestic water inlet isolation valve on the boiler fixing jig. In turn, open any hot taps to bleed the air and close them when water flows. Check for soundness on the entire domestic water system. Open the 2 central heating isolating valves on the jig. Turn on the mains electricity supply to the boiler and set the central heating and the domestic hot water temperature to off by pressing the mode button and the minus button. The system pressure can now be viewed on the digital display. If the pressure is less than 1 bar, repressurize and vent the system by connecting the filling loop. Isolate the boiler from the electrical supply, turn on the gas supply at the meter, turn on the gas service valve at the appliance. Check that any external controls are calling for heat. Turn on the main electrical supply to the appliance. The digital display will now show water temperature. The appliance will enter a self-checking routine. Then the fan will start and ignition will commence. If the burner fails to light initially, this may be due to air in the gas supply. The boiler will automatically have 5 ignition attempts. If the burner fails to ignite, the display will show F1. Press the reset button to repeat the ignition sequence. Once the system has been purged of air, set the domestic hot water to the desired temperature using the mode and plus buttons, and open a hot water tap. The diverter valve motor will move to the hot water position, and the display will read the system pressure. Check that the hot water temperature is correct, and then close the hot tap. Set the central heating temperature to the required level using the mode and plus buttons. The appliance will then continue to fire in central heating until the user controls are satisfied, or there is another demand for hot water. After ignition in central heating demand, the boiler will ramp slowly to full rate. This is an adaptive feature to cope with small system requirements. Balance the radiators as required. Turn off all the radiators that can be shut off by the user and check to see if less than the maximum 20 degrees centigrade differential can be achieved across the flow and return. Check the gas supply pressure is 20 millibar when firing at full rate by connecting a manometer to the gas inlet test point and opening several hot water taps. Allow the system to reach maximum temperature, then switch off the boiler at the electrical isolating switch. Drain the entire system rapidly whilst hot, using the drain tap at the lowest part of the system. Fill and vent the system as previously described. Instruct the end user upon the use of the appliance and complete the benchmark logbook. Installation of the Flexicom CX high-efficiency condensing combi is now complete. As demonstrated throughout this installation DVD, the entire Flexicom range can be installed without removing the casing. As the name suggests, they are amazingly flexible and surprisingly compact, so much so that they can fit into a kitchen wall cupboard. The installation flexibility of the Flexicom range is further enhanced by the availability of the Glowworm Plume Management Kit.